Hey, good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Hope all is well. John here, and we are heading into week 7, which is kind of crazy. It just seems like we started this course. So here we are, just wrapping things up. So just wanted to go over a few things this week. I don't have a lot this week. Just wanted to go through a couple things with respect to the discussion question this week, some of the things that I've seen and have come up in discussion questions, and just a couple of tips as you head into getting ready for your final papers. So the first thing I want to talk about is, and I talked a little bit about last week, but it's this whole idea of we focused. We had a little bit of sort of this preview of ethical issues in the first week or so, where we talked about different ethical theories, in ethical principles. And you might recall we had that assignment that asked you to sort of analyze this scenario of a limited supply of vaccinations, and how you would distribute that limited supply under the various lenses of ethical theories that we were discussing and that are in your text. So we had that little preview. Then we really focused on sort of the legal component of the case we're focusing on in this class, and what are legal issues, what is a legal analysis, what are the different elements of the legal issues we're discussing in this class. And now since last week, we're really kind of shifting back to the whole ethics component of this case. And what does that really mean? So I wanted to just sort of emphasize, and I think this is important, because in your final assignment, your final milestone project for the Itraldi case, you have a legal component section in that case, and then you also have an ethics component in that case. And so it's really important to be able to distinguish what is a legal issue, what is an ethics issue. And if you here, a good rule of thumb is, ethics issues should be viewed through the lens of the different theories and principles we've discussed. And so there may be different facts in the case in which Dr. Rickinson, conducted himself in a manner that was inconsistent with whatever code of conduct he's supposed to abide by. And so if you identify those facts, analyze it through those different ethical theories and principles. And so, in terms of autonomy and beneficence and, those different principles, and also through the theories, the rights-based, what duty-based, whatever theory applies, analyze it through those lenses. And so I think that'll be a really important, and it's to be distinguished with legal issues, which really carry with them elements. And so that's not necessarily something you have in an ethical issue. You don't have an ethical issue, you're not looking at 4 or 5 different elements, analyzing each one and determining whether someone complied with some ethical code of conduct. That's something you would do in a legal analysis. And so, I mean, the big one here is with respect to malpractice. And, there are 4 elements to the malpractice. Standard of care, and it gets confusing, I get it, because there is some overlap. Someone could certainly deviate from the standard of care, and that could present some sort of ethical issue. And it's important to kind of parse that out and analyze it a little bit differently. So standard of care, you got your rule, you got your facts, you're going to apply those facts to that rule, and you come out with your conclusion. You're going to do that with each element of negligence or of malpractice. And so that is to be distinguished from ethical issues that you would analyze differently. So just as a reminder, ethics issues, look for those facts, analyze them through those various ethics principles and ethics theories. For the legal issues, you're going to analyze those through the lens of the elements of the cause of action that you're analyzing. And so that would go for both whatever may apply to Dr. Rickinson, the hospital, whatever other defendants you feel it's necessary to include in your analysis, that would apply across the board. So that's important, of course. If you have any questions, let me know. And that's it. That's all I have for that. The one thing I want to go for or talk about this week with respect to the discussion question, you'll see in the question, if you haven't seen already, we're talking about that Brittany Maynard case, and that's the case where the lady who was fatally ill with I believe it was cancer, went to Oregon to take advantage of their death with dignity laws. And so it kind of begs the question, and I think I put in a recent post included how many states as of January of this year now have similar laws as the one that Oregon had at the time. And it kind of brings up this question. Many of you are clinicians or in some manner professionally licensed, and it kind of brings up the question of personal ethics versus professional duty. And that's not that every day I deal with that, but that's certainly something that occasionally comes up in my profession as an attorney. That if you represent a client who may have done some things that were totally unethical, or wants to do something that may be construed as unethical, how do you analyze that through the ethical issues that you're bound by versus the professional duties you're bound by? It's a little bit different in my profession, because in any profession really, because no one's if you're ever asked to do something unethical, the answer to that is pretty easy. I mean, you should never obviously go against whatever ethical code you're bound by, but in this case, let's just take this case for example. In Oregon at the time, and currently, they have this law that allows medical professionals to assist in someone taking medication that would expedite their death for those that are critically ill. And that's very controversial, and obviously something that many people have an issue with from a personal ethics standpoint. And the question is, that's to do that would be you'd be doing something completely legal. It was totally legal in Oregon. But at what point do you say, okay, I'm gonna do my professional duty here, whatever that may be, and set aside my personal ethics in order to help this patient? So and I'm not saying there's right or wrong answer, right? And just remember that we're not here about right or wrong, especially with ethical issues. There's no right or wrong. There's just how do we feel about a particular situation given our own personal values and ethics. And so just it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. And hopefully as you process that discussion question, think about what you're going to write in your initial post and how you respond to people. Just keep that in mind. It's just kind of this tension between the two sometimes, between your own personal ethics and professional duties. Put it in another context. This is always, this sort of example always clarifies it for me, and it puts it out of the healthcare area into something else, which sometimes helps me with clarity on the issue. A police officer can personally believe that a certain law the officer is required to enforce is wrong, and that may be very true in many cases. However, under the code of conduct for the police force, the officer is required to obey all lawful and reasonable instructions to enforce that law, unless there is good and sufficient cause to do otherwise. So that's a great example of that tension that could exist between an officer's personal ethics or personal belief that a certain law is wrong, and however this code of conduct may require the officer to enforce that law. So kind of an interesting tension, something to think about. That's all I have for that. Just a couple of tips as you prepare the milestone assignment. Um, you'll see, especially for the milestone, the final assignment for the iTrolly case, you'll see that it's really kind of a combination of the assignments that you've already done thus far in class. I always get a handful of students in each class that make the mistake if they got an A on one or both of the previous assignments. They make the mistake of just putting it all together in one paper and submitting that, thinking that they'll get an A. A couple of things wrong with that. So if you did get an A in those previous assignments, don't assume that you can just resubmit the same assignment and that you'll get an A. So a couple of reasons why. First is, if you notice the rubric is fairly different than the rubrics for the previous assignments, and so please keep that in mind. Rubric's different, so therefore I'm going to look at it a little bit differently. So therefore, if you complied with the rubric in the previous assignment, got an A, did a great job, you very well may do a great job here, but don't assume that you'll get an A on that same paper. So keep that in mind. The second thing is I am totally human, especially when it comes to grading, and there may be something that I just didn't notice or did notice and won't notice this time in this assignment. And so I do the very best I can with all the papers that I have to grade and walk through, especially that last week when I have a really short turnaround time on that last assignment in terms of grading before I have to get grades submitted. So that typically assignments are due that Sunday night. Not typically, every time that the grades are due, that assignments are due that Sunday night. And up to this point, grades have always been I've had to submit grades that following Tuesday. So I only get I try to get ahead for those that submit assignments early, try to get those done early. But for those that wait till Sunday night and submit their assignments, I have a really short turnaround time on submitting grades. So I do the very best I can. So my point is that there may be some things that I missed or didn't miss in one or both of the assignments that may change the way I look at this final paper. So one thing, if you can't go wrong with one thing, regardless of what your grade was on the prior assignments. If you go through the rubric, that's exactly what I do when I grade. I go through the rubric and the final assignment, just check off the box, look at each section thoroughly. It really helps the reader, not just me, but any reader, if you have section headers for each of those sections in the rubric. So it's very easy to read. I can easily find what I'm looking for. And then, so if you do that, just please, just pay attention to the rubric, go section by section, and fulfill the requirements in each section. And that's your best bet in terms of getting a good grade on this final assignment. So that's all I have. Of course, if you have any questions, let me know. I am I'm traveling this week from Thursday to, I leave Thursday morning, get back Sunday, but I am available. So if you have any questions, I will be checking email. You can text me, you can call me. We'll set aside a time to chat if you need to. And I will be, probably won't be online during the day, but in the evenings I will check the posts and check what's going on each night. So hope you're all doing well. As always, please let me know if you need anything or if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you later. Have a great week.